and there's so many resources out there today to learn about UX research as a field. And
Hmm.
but there's certainly one thing that I wish I did earlier, and I just really kind of didn't know how to, and maybe it wasn't my natural first step I would take. But I would say, if anything, connect with people in the field and ask for advice. I was really kind of shy at first, and I didn't quite know how to reach out and what to say. And as much as I love to help others, I'm really bad at asking for help. So, knowing that now, there are so many people out there that are willing to help. And I'm so grateful for all the leaders I've had the opportunity to meet and talk with. And they gave me such great advice. It really helps you learn faster, get a better perspective, know where to turn, who to turn to, get like more understanding of the nuances and the kind of applied research that you don't necessarily get from a book and a course. But with that, still, I would keep learning, keep reading books, take the courses, do passion projects, and write about your learnings in your portfolio. I think it's important as a researcher too that you have a portfolio, and it certainly doesn't look the same way as a designer's, right? But it needs to show your process. It needs to show your train of thinking, how you went about actually understanding a problem at hand and understanding what the users really need, uh, deeply applying different methodologies and techniques. And then another thing to keep in mind is, certainly, if you have an advanced degree, that's incredibly helpful, and hats off to you. And of course, this really helps when you're trying to get into the field. Um, but I remember being myself extremely self-conscious because I didn't have a master's degree or a PhD, and I still have some thoughts about that every now and then. I'm like, maybe I need to get a master's. Um, but honestly, being in the field for a little bit longer, there are so many different paths to UX research that might seem a little bit less conventional and don't really necessarily include getting a degree in HCI or psychology or cognitive science. So I wouldn't, as much as I think it's great and it's helpful, I wouldn't see that as the only path into UX research.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that. There are so many different ways to get into this path. And earlier you mentioned that you can go and connect with as many people as you want. There are a lot of people out there who are willing to help. What if you have a really shy personality? Where should where should those people go and connect people with? Is that on LinkedIn or some other platform, or go into events in person?
It's really good to try to get out of your comfort zone. Normally, those are the opportunities for
Right.
growth, right? That's where you actually grow the most, right? I think there's a lot of different ways. All these ways that you mentioned, I think, are good, and I would at least try to attempt each before saying, "Oh, this is my preferred way of doing it." I actually started by going to workshops
Mm.
and smaller kind of meetups, and there I got to know people, told them about what I'm trying to do, what's my goal, what's my story, and they would connect me with others that way. So
Right.
that's one way, right? But then also, I've been approached by so many people over LinkedIn directly too. And even if I wasn't able to directly be like, "Oh, I can refer you for a job," I could at least give them advice, take a look at their
Mhm.
portfolio or resume, and have that conversation of what might be even better, what might work even better, talk to them about all the different ways of getting into the field. So
Mhm.
reaching out over LinkedIn, even if it's like kind of totally out of the blue, um, a lot of people might still respond. So I think that's totally valid to try as well.
Right. Yes, super great advice. And to follow up on that, how about switching from an individual contributor role to a manager role, as what you did, right, throughout your career journey? When would it be a good time to do that switch?
That really depends. As I mentioned before, it does depend a little bit of someone, of one's aspirations, goals, what you really want to do.
Hmm.
I think it's worth saying that, many people actually want to switch to a manager role because they think it pays more. And while that might be the case, it's not always true. And in many cases, a manager might actually be earning less than their direct report with roughly the same level of experience. So,
Mhm.
that's one thing to consider is why are you trying to get into management? And some people also think management means kind of like less work and more leading. And while this may be true to some extent, that there's more focus on leadership is not reserved only for managers. And when it comes to the amount of work you do, it just changes what it is that your day-to-day looks like. So you end up doing a lot of administrative tasks, a lot of paperwork sort of things, a lot of advocating and planning and spreadsheets.
Right.
Um, so, and as I mentioned before, leadership is not only reserved for managers, right? These days, so
Mhm.
many companies have career tracks for highly skilled workers that
Right.
don't require management, that you should really, and all this is to say that you should really, think hard about what makes you happy. And if you really want to be a manager, you can really kind of start by thinking about what are the strengths that you have that
Mhm.
you really want to
Mhm.
share with others and support others in their growth and learning,
Mhm.
um, and maybe think about what are the areas that you want to help
Mhm.
people grow in, and then also looking for those opportunities with other people who are looking to build the strength that you already have, for instance. And of course, also when it comes to timing, like you mentioned before, it always helps to talk with your manager about your goals and expectations. And normally, your manager is there to help you really think about how can you chart that course and where you kind of stand at the moment. And
Mhm.
again, even if you don't have a manager, you don't have that particular job at the moment, maybe reach out to people in the network and learn about their career paths, and you'll find your own. And sometimes it's really just that the opportunity offers itself and you kind of step into that manager role, and sometimes it's really kind of planned out, so it really depends on your situation.
Mhm. And another thing don't forget about is you do not leave the title manager to be a leader, right? As an individual contributor, you can always be a leader on your team to practice your leadership. Just depends on the projects you work on and depends on your ambition, I guess.
Absolutely.